Okay, so this is the daf for Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. We're in Sanhedrin 92. So I'm going to go to the end of 91 and get context here. So Rav Chana Bar Bizna says that Rabbi Shimon Hasida says, with regard to anyone who withholds halacha from being studied by the mouth of a student who seeks to study Torah, even fetuses in their mother's womb curse him, as it is stated, he who holds bar, and then now we're in 92, the people, Laom, shall curse him, Yikevuhu, but blessing shall be upon the head of one who provides, Proverbs 11:26. And the term Laom is referring to nothing other than fetuses, as it is stated, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people shall be separated from your bowels, and the one, Laom, shall overcome the other, Laom. Genesis 25:23. And Kabo is referring to nothing other than curse, as it is stated in the statement of Bilam. How can I curse one who is not cursed, or Kabo, by God? Numbers 23, verse 8. And Bar is referring to nothing other than Torah, as it is stated, pay homage to Bar lest he be angry. Psalms 2:12. That is, observe the Torah and avoid God's wrath. Ula Bar Yishmael says, one who perforates like a sieve, so a person who withholds halacha from a student, it is written here, he who withholds bar, the people, Yikevuhu, Proverbs 11:26, and it is written there, and he bored, Vayikov, a hole in its lid of it. 2 Kings 12:10. And Abaye says, one perforates him like a launderer's utensil used for sprinkling water on garments. So basically, just think of like a colander. That's basically what it is. There's a picture here of what it just looks like a colander with a bowl with holes in it. Is the launderer's sieve. So if one teaches the student halacha rather than withholding it, what is his reward? Rava says that Rav Sheshet says he is privileged to receive blessings like Yosef, as it is stated at the end of that verse, quote, but blessing shall be upon the head of one who provides, so mashbir, Proverbs 11:26. And mashbir is referring to no one other than Yosef, as it is stated, quote, and Yosef was the governor of the land, and he was the provider, or hamashbir, to all the people of the land, Genesis 42, verse 6. Rav Sheshet says, anyone who teaches Torah in this world is privileged and teaches it in the world to come, as it is stated, and he who satisfies abundantly, so umarveh, shall be satisfied himself, yoreh, Proverbs 11:25. Rav Sheshet interprets the verse homiletically by transposing the letters of the word marveh, memresh vav he. One arrives at the word moreh, meaning like teaching. The verse means the one who teaches, or moreh, will teach yoreh in the future as well. So the Gemara returns to the topic of the source for resurrection in the Torah. Rava says, from where is resurrection of the dead derived from the Torah? It is derived from a verse as it is stated, let Ruvain live and not die. In that his men become few, Deuteronomy 33, verse 6. This is interpreted, quote, let Ruvain live in this world and not die in the world to come. Ravina says that resurrection is derived from here. Quote, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awaken, some to everlasting life and some to reproaches and everlasting disgrace. Daniel 12, verse 2. Ravashi says proof is derived from here. But go you your way until the end be, and you shall rest and arise to your lot at the end of days. Daniel 12:13. I find it interesting that a lot of these verses now, they're further into the Tanakh, whereas in the previous, I think, 1 or 2 sections, it was like verses right out of the Torah. And I've heard someone say, and I don't know how true it is, so if anybody out there knows, please comment and let me know. But I heard from somebody that had some rabbinic training that the ideal in the Talmud was to find a source verse closest to the center of the Torah. So I know the center of the Torah in terms of letters is the Vav and the word Gahon for the section dealing with kashrut in the book of Leviticus. And Gahon means, in that case, it means belly, right? But anyway, so if anybody knows a source for that, in terms of the closer to the center of the Torah the proof verse is, the more authoritative it is. I don't know. If somebody knows, please let me know. Okay, Rabbi Elazar says, any communal leader who leads the community calmly without anger and honesty is privileged and leads them in the world to come, as it is stated. Quote, for he that has compassion upon them will lead them, even by the springs of water shall he guide them. Isaiah 49, verse 10. Just as he led them in this world, so too he will guide them in the world to come. The Gemara proceeds to cite additional statements of Rabbi Elazar relating to recommended conduct. And Rabbi Elazar says, great is knowledge as it was placed between two letters, two names of God, as it is stated, for, quote, for a God of knowledge is the Lord. 1 Samuel 2, verse 3. Rabbi Elazar says, great is the holy temple as it too was placed between two letters, two names of God, as it is stated, the place in which to dwell that you have made, Lord, the temple, Lord, which your hands have prepared. So the word for God is, the name for God is mentioned two times in that verse. Exodus 15, verse 17. Rav Ada Karhina's objections to the explanation that being placed between two names of God accords significance. If that is so, the same should hold true for vengeance. Shall one say, great is vengeance, as it was placed between two letters, as it is written, God of vengeance, Lord, God of vengeance, shine forth. So again, there's two words there, two names of God. Psalms 94, verse 1. Rabbi Elazar said to him, in its context, indeed, vengeance is great. In accordance with the statement of Ula, as Ula says with regard to these two appearances, O Lord, God to whom vengeance belongs, God to whom vengeance belongs, appear. So Psalms 94, verse 1. And, quote, he appeared from Mount Paran, Deuteronomy 33, verse 2. Why are both necessary? The one, the second verse, is necessary for the attribute of divine good with which God gave Torah at Sinai. And one, the first verse, is necessary for the attribute of divine punishment with which God exacts vengeance against the enemies and oppressors of the Jewish people. So, and Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to any person whom there is knowledge, it is as though the temple was built in his days, as this knowledge was placed between two letters, and that the temple was placed between two letters. And Rabbi Elazar says, any person in whom there is knowledge ultimately becomes wealthy, as it is stated, and by knowledge are the chambers filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Proverbs 24, verse 4. I don't know, I read that article, Segulot for Parnasa, or in other words, like actions, or like, I don't want to use the word amulets, but actions for gaining a livelihood. And I don't remember that statement being in there. Any person in whom there is knowledge, it is though the temple, Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to any person in whom there is knowledge, it is as though the temple was built in his days, as this knowledge was placed between two letters, and that the temple was placed between two letters. And Rabbi Elazar says, any person in whom there is knowledge ultimately becomes wealthy, as it is stated, and by knowledge are the chambers filled with all precious and pleasant riches. And that's Proverbs 24, verse 4. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to any person in whom there is no knowledge, it is prohibited to have mercy on him, as it is stated, for it is a people with no understanding, therefore its maker will have no mercy on them, and its creator will show them no favor. Isaiah 27, verse 11. And if God has no mercy upon them, all the more so should people not show them mercy. And Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to anyone who gives his bread to one without knowledge, afflictions befall him, as it is stated, they who eat your bread will place mazor under you, in whom there is no discernment. Ovadia 1:7. And mazor means nothing other than afflictions, based on the parallel with another verse, as it is stated, and Ephraim saw his sickness, and Judah his wound, or mazoro, Hosea 5:13. This indicates that one who gives his bread to one without discernment will ultimately fall ill. Rabbi Elazar says, any person whom there is no knowledge is ultimately exiled, as it is stated, therefore my people were exiled for lack of knowledge, Isaiah 5:13. And Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to any house in which there are no matters of Torah heard at night, the fire of Gehenna consumes it, as it is stated, all darkness is laid up for his treasures. A fire not fanned shall consume him, it shall go ill with a sarid in his tent, Job 20 verse 26. Sarid is referring to no one but a Torah scholar, as it is stated, and among the Seradim, those whom the Lord shall call, Joel 3 verse 5. A house that is dark at night in which no Torah is heard will be consumed by a fire that does not require fanning with a bellows, the fire of Gehenna. And Rabbi Elazar says, anyone who does not benefit Torah scholars from his property never sees a blessing, a sign of blessing. As it is stated, none of his food shall remain, or sarid, therefore his prosperity shall not endure, Job 20 verse 21. Sarid is referring to no one but Torah scholars, as it is stated, and among the Seradim, those who the Lord shall call. No prosperity will come to one who does not share his food with a Torah scholar. Rabbi Elazar says, anyone who does not leave bread on his table at the end of his meal, indicating his gratitude to God for providing him more than enough, never sees a sign of blessing, as it is stated, none of his food shall remain, therefore his prosperity shall not endure. The Gemara asks, but doesn't Rabbi Elazar say with regard to anyone who leaves pieces of bread on his table, it is as if he worships idols, as it is stated, who prepare a table for fortune or God, and offer blended wine for destiny. Isaiah 65:11. The people would leave pieces of bread on the table as an offering to the constellation God. That's Gad, which means fortune. So, and they have believed which they believed influences the fortune of the home. This practice was a form of idol worship. The Gemara answers, this apparent contradiction is not difficult. This case where leaving pieces of bread as a form of idol worship applies when there is a whole loaf together with the pieces, as the addition of pieces is clearly for idol worship. That case where failure to leave bread on the table is criticized applies when there is no whole loaf together with the pieces. And Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to anyone who amends the truth in his speech, it is as though he worships idols, as it is written here in the verse where Jacob sought to resist taking his father's blessing from Esau. It says, quote, and I shall seem to him a deceiver. Mitatea, Genesis 27, verse 12. And it is written there with regard to idol worship, they are vanity, the work of deception, tatuim, Jeremiah 10:15. And Rabbi Elazar says, with regard to anyone who looks at nakedness, or erva, his bow is emptied. His bow is emptied. He will be robbed of his potency. As it is stated, your bow is stripped bare, or eryah, Habakkuk 3:9. Rabbi Elazar says, forever be in the dark, that is anonymous, and you will continue to exist. Rabbi Zerah says, we learn a similar idea in a Mishnah as well, Negaim 2:3. In a dark house, one does not open windows to illuminate it in order to see whether or not its blemish is leprosy. And the house retains the presumptive status of ritually pure. Those matters that are obscured are allowed to continue. The Gemara confirms. Conclude from the Mishnah that this is so. The Gemara returns to the topic of the source for resurrection in the Torah. Rabbi Tavi says that Rabbi Yoshia says, what is the meaning of that which is written? There are three that are never satisfied, the grave, the barren womb, and the earth that does not receive sufficient water. Proverbs 30, verse 15 and 16. And what does a grave have to do with a womb? Rather, they are juxtaposed to say to you, just as a womb takes in and gives forth, so too a grave takes in and also gives forth, which means the resurrection of the dead. And are these matters not inferred a fortiori? If, with regard to a womb, in which one introduces the embryo in secret, one removes the baby from it, accompanied by the loud sounds of the woman crying out during childbirth, then with regard to the grave, into which one introduces the corpse with sounds of wailing and mourning the dead, it is not right that one removes It is not right the one removes from it the resurrected dead, accompanied by the loud shouts of those who say there is no resurrection of the dead derived from the Torah. The school of Eliyahu taught, the righteous whom the blessed Holy One is the school of Eliyahu taught, the righteous whom the Holy One, blessed be He, is destined to resurrect, do not return to their dust, as it is stated, and it shall come to pass that he who remains in Zion and he who remains in Jerusalem shall be called holy, anyone who is written unto life in Jerusalem. Isaiah 4:3. Just as the Holy One exists forever, so too will they exist forever. And if you say, during those years when the Holy One, blessed be He, is destined to renew His world, as it is stated, and the Lord alone shall be exalted on that day, Isaiah 2:11. What are the righteous to do? How will they survive? The Holy One, blessed be He, will make wings like eagles for them, and they will fly over the surface of the water, as it is stated. Therefore he will not fear when God changes the land, and when the mountains are moved in the midst of the sea. Proverbs 46, verse 3. Although God will renew the land, they will not fear, because they will be in the sky over the sea at that time, unless you say that they will endure suffering from flying uninterrupted for an extended period. The verse states, but they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not tire. Isaiah 40, verse 31. The Gemara suggests, and let us derive from the dead, that Ezekiel revived. See Ezekiel chapter 37. That the resurrected dead will not live forever, but will die at some point. The Gemara explains the school of Eliyahu holds in accordance with the opinion of the one who says, in truth, Ezekiel's depiction of the dry bones that came to life was a parable from which nothing can be derived with regard to the nature of resurrection. It is, as it is taught in a Braita, that Rabbi Eliezer says, the dead that Ezekiel revived stood on their feet and recited a song to God and died. And what song did they recite? The Lord kills with justice and gives life with mercy. Rabbi Yehoshua says it was this song that they recited. Quote, the Lord kills and gives life. He lowers to the grave and elevates. 1 Samuel 2:6. Rabbi Yehuda says Ezekiel's depiction of the dry bones that came to life was truth, and it was a parable. Okay, Rabbi Nehemiah said to Rabbi Yehuda, if it was true, why do you refer to it as a parable? And if it was a parable, why do you refer to it as truth? Rather, it means in truth it was a parable. Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Yoshi Haglili, says, not only was it not a parable, the dead that Ezekiel revived ascended to Eretz Yisrael and married wives and fathered sons and daughters. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera stood on his feet and said, I am a descendant of their sons, and these are phylacteries or tefillin that my father's father left me from them. So he was basically saying that he's a descendant of the people that Ezekiel resurrected in the Valley of Dry Bones. So the Gemara asks, and who are the dead that Ezekiel revived? Rav says, these were the descendants of Ephraim who calculated the time of the end of the enslavement and the redemption from Egypt and erred in their calculation. They left before the appointed time and were killed, as it is stated. And the sons of Ephraim, Shutelah, and Bered his son, and Tahath his son, and Elaadah his son, and Tahath his son, and Zabad his son, and Shutelah his son, and Ezer and Elaad, whom the men of Gath that were born in the land slew, because they came down to take their cattle. 1 Chronicles 7:20 and 21. And it is written, quote, in Ephraim their father mourned many days, and his brothers came to comfort him. 1 Chronicles 7:22. And Shmuel says, these dead that Ezekiel revived were people who deny the resurrection of the dead, as it is stated. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say our bones are dried and our hope is lost. We are cut off. Ezekiel 37:11. God tells Ezekiel that these people who had lost hope for resurrection. So Rabbi Yermiah bar Abba says these were people in whom there was not even the moist residue of a mitzvah, as it is stated. The dry bones hear the word of the Lord. Ezekiel 37, verse 4. Even during their lifetime, they were comparable to dry bones. Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha says, These are the people who covered the sanctuary with repugnant creatures and creeping animals, as it is stated. So I entered and saw, and behold, every form of creeping animal and repugnant animal, and all the idols of the house of Israel etched upon the wall around. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 10. And it is written there with regard to the prophecy of the dry bones, and he passed me over them, around and around. Ezekiel 37, verse 2. By means of a verbal analogy between around in one verse and identical in another, it is derived that the two verses are referring to the same people. Rabbi Yochanan says, these are the dead from the Dora Valley. See Daniel chapter 3. And Rabbi Yochanan says, these corpses fill the area from the Eshel River to Rabat, which constitutes the Dura Valley. As at the time that Nebuchadnezzar the wicked exiled the Jewish people to Babylon, there were among them youths who overshadowed the sun with their beauty, and the Chaldean women would see them and desire them and discharge a flow of zava. These women told their husbands, and their husbands told the king, and the king ordered the youths executed, and his servants executed them. And their execution did not resolve the problem, as the women were still discharging a flow of zava. Even after the death, the youth's beauty remained intact. The king ordered that their corpses be taken to the valley, and his servants trampled them so that their form would no longer be visible. The sages taught in Braita, at the moment that Nebuchadnezzar the wicked cast Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah into the fiery furnace, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Ezekiel, go and revive the dead in the Dura Valley. Once Ezekiel revived them, the bones came and struck Nebuchadnezzar, that wicked man, in his face, and Nebuchadnezzar said, what is the nature of these? His servants said to him, the friend of these three, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, is reviving the dead in the Dura Valley. Nebuchadnezzar began and said, how great are his signs and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. Daniel 3:33. Rabbi Yitzchak says, molten gold should be poured into the mouth of the wicked person. His mouth should be sealed in the course of an extraordinary death in deference to royalty. Rabbi Yitzchak suggested that gold would be used to accomplish that task. The reason is that if an angel had not come and struck him on his mouth to prevent him from continuing his praise, he would have sought to overshadow all the songs and praises that King David recited in the book of Psalms, or Tehillim. The sages taught in Braita, Tanu Rabbanan, 6 miracles were performed on that day that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were delivered from the furnace. They are: the furnace rose from where it was sunken into the ground, and the furnace was breached, and its limestone dissipated, and the graven image that Nebuchadnezzar established, which he commanded his subjects to worship. So Daniel 3, verses 5 and 6. It fell on its face, and 4 ranks of officers from monarchies who stood around the furnace were burned. And Ezekiel revived the dead in the Dura Valley. And the knowledge that all the miracles were performed is on tradition. And the 4 ranks of officers from monarchies that were burned is related in a verse, as it is written, then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and the rulers of the provinces. Daniel 3, verse 2. And it is written, there are certain Jews, they do not serve your gods nor worship the golden image you have erected. Daniel 3:12. And it is written in the verse after Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah left the fiery furnace, it says, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered and saw these men. Daniel 3:27, who emerged from the fire unscathed. Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather 8 ranks of officials, and only 4 ranks witnessed Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah emerged from the furnace. Apparently, the other 4 ranks were burned in the fire. The school of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov teaches, even during the period of danger, a person should not deviate from his prominence and demean himself, as it is stated. Then these men were bound in their mantles, their tunics, and their hats, and their other garments, and they were cast in the blazing fiery furnace. Daniel 3:21. Even when cast into the furnace, they donned garments befitting their station. So Rabbi Yochanan says, and that is the end of 92. Thanks for listening.